Ethan Walker never believed in miracles anymore. Not since the night his wife died in a late-fall car crash on an empty Texas highway, leaving him alone with their 5-year-old son, Mason. For 2 years he had kept his heart locked away, moving through life like a man underwater, slow, heavy, breathless. So when his sister signed him up for a charity matchmaking dinner without telling him, he felt more irritated than hopeful, certain it was some kind of misguided prank. But when he arrived at the small community cafe, he noticed something strange. People weren't whispering about him. They were whispering about the woman sitting alone at the table reserved for him. A woman in a wheelchair, her hands resting in her lap, her gaze lowered as if she expected nothing from anyone. And that was the moment Ethan realized this wasn't a joke at all. Fate had simply chosen a very unexpected way to introduce him to someone who would change everything. If you believe kindness and second chances matter, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support truly helps stories like this reach more hearts. Her name was Grace Harmon, and according to the small card on the table, she had lost her hearing in childhood and her mobility in her early 20s after a devastating spinal infection. She communicated mostly through sign language and a speech device strapped to her lap. Ethan froze, unsure whether the universe was mocking him or nudging him towards something bigger than the fear he'd been hiding behind. He had barely spoken since his wife died. How was he supposed to talk to someone who couldn't hear him? But then Grace lifted her eyes, and he saw something he hadn't expected: humor, as if she could sense every ounce of his awkwardness and found it both predictable and harmless. They spent the first several minutes in silence. Ethan didn't know how to begin, and Grace didn't seem to mind. She typed a greeting on her device, and when it spoke in its mechanical voice, "Thank you for sitting with me. Most people walk away." Ethan felt something crack open inside his chest. He scrambled for words, but his throat tightened as if 2 years of grief had glued it shut. Grace simply watched him, her eyes soft and patient, and somehow that made him want to try harder than he had tried for anything in a long time. As the hour passed, something unexpected began to happen. Grace laughed, silent but unmistakable, shoulders trembling, eyes narrowing with amusement, delight lighting her face like someone who rarely received the gift of being included. Ethan found himself leaning forward, listening intently as she typed stories about therapy dogs, how she'd learned to paint using adaptive tools, and how strangers often treated her like she was invisible or fragile glass. He told her about Mason, about the guilt he carried, about how afraid he was of ruining anyone else's life by letting them near the wreckage of his own. And even though she couldn't hear him, she understood him with a depth no one else had. At one point, a server accidentally bumped her wheelchair, and Grace flinched. Instinctively, Ethan reached out and steadied her. That single touch, brief but gentle, felt like an entire conversation they hadn't yet had. Grace's eyes flickered with something like surprise, then something like hope. Still, Ethan left that night convinced it was just a kind moment shared between two wounded people. Beautiful, yes, but not the beginning of anything real. He was a single dad. She faced limitations that might make life far more complicated for both of them. It didn't make sense. It couldn't. But Grace thought otherwise. 3 days later, he received an email from her. It wasn't long, just a simple thank you, but attached was a short video message. Ethan opened it reluctantly, expecting a polite goodbye. Instead, he saw Grace sitting in her backyard, sunlight warming her face. She lifted her hands and signed slowly. At the bottom of the video, subtitle translated her words, "You made me feel seen. I haven't felt that in a long time." Ethan watched it 3 times. Then he sat very still, realizing he had not been seen in a long time either. He invited her to a park so Mason could come, secretly terrified of what his son might say or how he might react. But when Mason saw Grace's wheelchair, he simply walked up and placed a small toy car on her lap as if offering her the most valuable thing he owned. Grace's laughter poured out silently, pure and childlike, and her whole face brightened. In that moment, Ethan witnessed something he couldn't explain: how easily children understood what adults often complicated over. The weeks that followed, Ethan found himself anticipating her messages, craving the calm she brought into his chaotic world. Grace wasn't helpless. She was strong in ways others never noticed. She navigated life with determination, resilience, and a spark that turned her limitations into something almost noble. And Ethan wasn't broken. He was simply a man who had forgotten the courage it took to hope again. One evening, months after their first meeting, they sat on a hillside overlooking the city lights. Mason was asleep in the stroller beside them, and a warm breeze rustled the dry grass. Grace typed something into her device, hesitated, then deleted it. She tried again, fingers trembling, breath unsteady. Then the device spoke just one line, one single sentence that shattered every boundary Ethan had held between them. "I don't need you to fix me. I just want you to stay. Ethan felt the world tilt. No one had ever said something so simple and so devastatingly sincere. Grace wasn't asking him to be her savior, her caretaker, or her hero. She was asking him to be present, to choose her, to allow himself to be chosen. And for the first time, he realized that love wasn't always about ability or perfection. It was about courage, connection, and the willingness to walk beside someone even when the path wasn't easy. In that quiet, trembling moment, Ethan reached out and took her hand. She couldn't feel the warmth as fully as others might, but she felt enough. Her eyes filled with tears, not of sadness but gratitude that someone saw her as a woman deserving of love, not a burden. And Ethan felt something deep within him finally begin to heal. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your engagement helps keep stories of hope, compassion, and second chances alive. Before you read the final lines, please comment below what moment in this story moved you the most. Ethan, Grace, and little Mason built a life slowly, intentionally, beautifully. And on the days when life became heavy, they faced it together, proving that real love isn't measured by what a person can physically do. It's measured by the courage to show up, to stay, and to believe that even the most broken stories can still find redemption.